All right, folks, buckle up, because we're about to take a deep dive. That's going to really make you question everything you thought you knew about, history, the news, maybe even your own mind. Hit that like and subscribe button if you're ready for, I guess you could say, a reality check?
I think reality check is putting it mildly.
Okay, fair enough. So we're diving headfirst into Michael A. Hoffman II's Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare. This book lays out a pretty intense theory, claiming there's this whole hidden layer to history, like a secret script that's running beneath the surface.
Yeah, Hoffman argues that this isn't just your run-of-the-mill conspiracy theory here. He's talking about a Masonic cryptocracy, these powerful groups like Freemasons, Rosicrucians, even the Ordo Templi Orientis. They're all using symbolism and mind control to basically, shape the world we live in, man.
Okay, so we're not just talking about, your local lodge meeting. We're talking about a global network of secret handshakes and some seriously sinister plots.
Well, Hoffman goes even deeper than that. He suggests they're not just influencing events, they're actually orchestrating them, using this whole language of symbols that's embedded in everything, from architecture to, get this, the JFK assassination.
Hold on. Before we go full conspiracy theory here, let's break this down step by step.
Sounds good to me.
First things first, Hoffman claims that modern man, for all his supposed rationality, he's actually super susceptible to mind control.
Right, yeah. He says we're constantly bombarded with things like flattery, subliminal messages, carefully crafted narratives that are all kind of working on us, shaping our thoughts and behaviors without us even realizing it.
So it's not about outright force, right? It's about subtly manipulating how we see the world, how we interpret things. Give me an example. How does this actually play out in everyday life?
Well, think about the news, right? Hoffman points out how fear and fascination, those are the tools that are used to kind of program the masses, The news cycle is always fixated on these sensationalized stories, violence, crime, disaster, all that. It creates this atmosphere of anxiety that can then be exploited to manipulate public opinion.
So it's not just about reporting the facts. It's about shaping our emotional response to the facts. If we're constantly afraid, we're more likely to accept whatever solution somebody offers, even if it means, giving up some of our freedom.
Exactly. Yeah. And Hoffman argues that advertising works hand in hand with the news to reinforce those messages, to create that specific psychological effect they're going for.
So it's like a double whammy, right? Hit us with fear from the news and then use advertising to tell us what to buy to feel safe again.
Precisely. And then he connects this to some pretty, controversial topics, right? Like pornography, violence, even Satanism. He suggests that these things aren't just societal problems, they're actually tools used for manipulation.
Whoa, okay. I'm starting to see how he's weaving these connections together. But who are the puppet masters here? Who's actually pulling the strings? This is where the secret societies come in, right?
That's right. He names groups like the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians, the Ordo Templi Orientis as being kind of like the key players in shaping world events.
Okay, I know a little bit about the Freemasons, right?
Yeah.
But the others are a little more mysterious. What's the deal with them?
Well, the Rosicrucians, they're shrouded in secrecy. Their origins are debated, but they're associated with mystical knowledge, spiritual enlightenment. And then you have the Ordo Templi Orientis, or OTO, which is often linked to figures like Aleister Crowley and his philosophy of Golem.
Golem? Isn't that like the do what thou wilt philosophy? That sounds a little chaotic.
Yeah, it can sound like that, but it's actually way more complex than that. It's about self-discovery, liberation. But you're right, it can be misinterpreted and misused. And Hoffman believes that all these groups, with their rituals, their symbolism, their influence, they're working to manipulate both nature and society for their own ends.
Okay, this is where it gets really mind-bending. What exactly are their ends, though? What's the big picture goal? What are they trying to achieve?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Hoffman suggests that their agenda is rooted in the occult, in controlling and transforming humanity through something he calls alchemy.
Alchemy, like turning lead into gold.
That's the popular idea, sure. But Hoffman takes it further. He's talking about a transformation of consciousness, a spiritual and societal shift, not just a physical change.
So are they using some kind of magical mumbo-jumbo to manipulate us? How do they even go about doing this?
Well, Hoffman believes they communicate through a secret language of symbols. Symbols they embed everywhere, from architecture to historical events. It's like a hidden code that only the initiated can understand.
Okay, give me an example. What kind of symbols are we talking about?
He points to the blazing star and the dog star Sirius, for instance, as having a profound significance in Masonic ritual. He even sees symbolism in the three unworthy craftsmen in relation to the assassinations of JFK, MLK, and RFK.
Hold up. 3 major assassinations, all linked by Masonic symbols. That's a pretty bold claim.
It is, yeah. And he doesn't stop there. He even sees significance in the selection of locations for certain events, like the Trinity site in New Mexico where the first atomic bomb was tested.
So it's not just about the events themselves, it's about the where and the when and all these like hidden layers of meaning, right?
That's the key to Hoffman's theory. He sees this intricate web of connections, and he believes that these groups are the ones pulling the strings.
I'm officially intrigued, but also a little freaked out.
Yeah.
Tell me more about this alchemical transformation thing. How do real-world events fit into that?
Well, that's where things get even darker, I guess you could say. Hoffman connects events like ritual murders to this alchemical process, suggesting they're not just random acts of violence, but carefully orchestrated rituals meant to impact humanity on a deeper level.
Okay, I need a real-world example here. How does a ritual murder play into this transformation?
He cites cases like the Jack the Ripper murders in Victorian London, suggesting they weren't just the acts of a deranged individual, but part of a Masonic ritual.
So you're saying Jack the Ripper was a pawn in this grand occult scheme?
That's what Hoffman proposes.
Yeah.
And he also points to the Son of Sam murders in New York City and the deliberate release of clues as having a symbolic significance. These events, he believes, are meant to imprint specific messages on the collective psyche, on humanity as a whole.
This is starting to feel like something out of a horror movie, but honestly, it's also kind of fascinating.
Right. That's the thing with Hoffman. He blends historical analysis with occult interpretations in a way that's both unsettling and strangely compelling,
Okay, I'm definitely hooked. But before we go any further, let's unpack this idea of mind control a bit more. How exactly does Hoffman see it playing out in our daily lives?
Well, he argues that one of the most effective tools is flattery. By constantly being told we're intelligent, we're advanced, we're free, we become complacent and less likely to question those in authority.
It's like we're being lulled into this false sense of security by compliments. We're too busy patting ourselves on the back to notice the strings being attached.
Exactly. And while we're distracted by our inflated egos, we fail to see how our beliefs and behaviors are being subtly manipulated.
Yeah, I can definitely see how that could work. I mean, who doesn't love a little ego boost, right?
Right, but Hoffman argues that flattery is often paired with fear-based programming to make it even more effective.
Give me an example. How does fear factor into all of this?
Well, think about how the media constantly bombards us with stories about crime, terrorism, economic instability, and so on. It creates this pervasive sense of fear and anxiety, making us more receptive to messages of control and authority.
So it's like a 1-2 punch, right?
Yeah.
First, they inflate our egos.
Okay.
Then they make us afraid, so we'll cling to anyone who promises safety and security.
Yes, precisely.
Yeah.
And this is where Hoffman ties in those controversial topics we mentioned earlier, like pornography, violence, and Satanism. He argues that these subjects are presented in a way that both repels and fascinates us, creating this morbid curiosity.
It's like a car crash you can't look away from. We're told it's bad, but we can't stop being drawn to it.
Exactly. And Hoffman suggests that this constant exposure desensitizes us, making these things more acceptable over time.
That's a disturbing thought, that we're slowly being conditioned to accept things we would normally find abhorrent.
It is, and it speaks to the insidious nature of psychological manipulation. Hoffman believes we're constantly being bombarded with messages that undermine our values and beliefs, often without us even realizing it.
So it's not just about outright control, it's about subtly shifting our perception of reality, right? Like a slow drip of poison that eventually becomes lethal.
That's a powerful analogy. And this is where those secret societies come back into play. Hoffman argues that they're the ones orchestrating this manipulation, using their understanding of the occult to shape our minds and steer us towards their desired outcome.
Okay, my head is spinning a bit, but I'm also totally hooked. Tell me more about these secret societies. What kind of occult traditions are they drawing on?
Well, Hoffman points to traditions like Hermeticism, which emphasizes symbolism, alchemy, and the pursuit of hidden knowledge. He argues that these groups believe they can tap into powerful forces through ritual and symbolism.
So it's not just about secret handshakes and clandestine meetings. There's a deeper, more mystical element at play.
That's right. He sees them as custodians of ancient knowledge that they use to influence the world.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture he's painting. But I'm still a bit fuzzy on their motivations. What do they actually want? What's their end game?
Hoffman believes their ultimate goal is to create a new world order, a society based on their occult principles and ruled by an elite few.
A new world order. That sounds like classic conspiracy theory territory.
It does. But remember, Hoffman isn't just throwing around buzzwords. He tries to back up his claims with historical analysis and specific examples.
All right, I'm willing to hear him out.
Yeah.
Give me some of those examples. How does he connect these secret societies to actual events in history?
Well, he looks at the symbolism surrounding events like the moon landing, the assassinations of JFK and MLK, and even the rise of modern technology.
Okay, let's start with the moon landing. What's the occult connection there?
Hoffman suggests that the moon landing wasn't just a scientific achievement, but also a ritualistic act, a symbolic fulfillment of ancient occult prophecies.
So he's saying there was a hidden meaning behind planting the American flag on the moon.
Exactly. He points to the involvement of Freemasons in the space program and sees the moon landing as part of a much larger agenda.
This is definitely getting mind-bending. What about the assassinations? How do they fit into this occult narrative?
Hoffman sees the assassinations of JFK and MLK as ritualistic murders, carefully orchestrated to achieve specific occult goals.
Ritualistic murders. That's a pretty heavy accusation.
Yeah.
What evidence does he present for that?
Well, he analyzes the symbolism surrounding the events. For example, he points to the location of JFK's assassination, Dealey Plaza, as having Masonic significance. He also sees the timing of these events and the way they were portrayed in the media as being part of a larger occult ritual.
Okay, I need a minute to process all of this. But before we go any further, I have a big question. If this cryptocracy is so powerful and influential, why haven't they just taken over the world already? What's stopping them?
That's a great question, and Hoffman has some interesting answers. He suggests that their power lies in secrecy and manipulation, not outright control. They operate in the shadows, subtly influencing events rather than taking center stage.
So it's like a puppet show where they control the strings but remain hidden from the audience.
Exactly. And Hoffman argues that their control is strengthened by the very fact that most people don't believe they exist.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
The more we dismiss them as conspiracy theories, the more powerful they become.
That's the paradox Hoffman highlights. Our disbelief is one of their greatest weapons. But he also argues that their power isn't absolute. They're constrained by the laws of nature and by the actions of those who are aware of their agenda.
So there's hope. We're not just pawns in their game.
That's the message Hoffman ultimately conveys. By becoming aware of their methods and motivations, we can begin to resist their influence.
Okay, that's a little empowering.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, I'm still struggling to wrap my head around all of this. It's a lot to take in.
I understand. It's a complex and challenging theory, one that requires careful consideration and a healthy dose of skepticism.
I feel like I've fallen down a rabbit hole and not sure how to get back out.
Well, that's the nature of exploring the unknown, right? It can be disorienting and unsettling, but it can also be incredibly rewarding.
I'm definitely feeling a mix of emotions right now, but I'm also curious to learn more. So where do we go from here?
I think the next step is to delve deeper into some of the specific examples Hoffman provides to see how he builds his case. Are you ready to continue down this path?
I'm a little apprehensive, but also fascinated. Let's keep going and see where this deep dive takes us.
Great. Let's start with the concept of mystical toponomy, which plays a significant role in Hoffman's analysis.
Mystical toponomy. That sounds intriguing. Break it down for me.
Essentially, it's the idea that certain locations hold occult significance, and that these places are deliberately chosen for specific events to tap into those energies,
So like a mystical energy grid overlaid on a map of the world.
That's one way to think about it. Hoffman argues that groups like the Freemasons are very aware of these power spots and use them to their advantage.
Okay, give me a concrete example. What's a real-world example of mystical toponomy in action?
Well, Hoffman points to the Trinity site in New Mexico, where the first atomic bomb was detonated. He argues that this location was chosen not just for its remoteness, but for its occult significance.
Wait, so the birthplace of the atomic age was chosen because of some mystical energy vortex?
That's what Hoffman suggests. He sees the Trinity site as a place of immense power, a nexus point where the physical and spiritual worlds converge.
Okay, I'm starting to see how he weaves these connections. But how does the atomic bomb itself fit into the occult narrative?
Hoffman argues that the creation of the atomic bomb wasn't just a scientific breakthrough, but a symbolic act of alchemy, a manifestation of humanity's hubris and its desire to control the forces of nature.
So the splitting of the atom was like splitting the fabric of reality itself.
That's one way to interpret it. He sees the atomic bomb as a symbol of immense power and immense danger, reflecting humanity's potential for both creation and destruction.
Okay, I'm starting to see the parallels he's drawing between the occult and the modern world.
Exactly, and Hoffman doesn't stop there. He also connects mystical toponomy to events like the Kennedy assassination.
Right, let's talk about JFK. How does location play into his assassination?
Hoffman argues that Dealey Plaza in Dallas, where Kennedy was shot, was deliberately chosen for its symbolic significance. He points to the presence of Masonic lodges in the area and sees the assassination as a ritualistic act.
So it's not just about the grassy knoll and the magic bullet. It's about the underlying occult symbolism of the location itself.
That's Hoffman's contention. He sees the Kennedy assassination as more than just a political murder. It's a symbolic act designed to send a message.
What kind of message?
A message of power and control. Hoffman argues that the assassination was a demonstration of the cryptocracy's ability to operate with impunity, to eliminate even the most powerful figures in the world.
That's a pretty chilling thought.
It is, and it speaks to the depths of Hoffman's theory. He sees the occult not as some fringe belief system, but as a force that shapes the course of history.
Okay, I'm starting to see the world through his lens, and it's a pretty wild ride.
It certainly is. But remember, we're just scratching the surface of his ideas. There's so much more to explore.
I'm both excited and terrified to continue this deep dive. But I think I'm ready for more. Let's see what other mind-blowing revelations await us in the next part of this deep dive.
Get ready to have your understanding of history and the world around you challenged even further. Welcome back to our deep dive into secret societies and psychological warfare.
Man, my brain is still buzzing from our last session, unpacking all these mind-blowing ideas,
I know, right? It's a lot to absorb. But that's the nature of a truly deep dive, And we're about to go even deeper. Remember how we talked about mystical toponomy and the significance of certain locations?
Yeah, like how Hoffman thinks the Trinity site was chosen for the first atomic bomb test because of its occult energy.
Right. Well, Hoffman takes that idea even further. He suggests that these groups don't just manipulate locations, they actually manipulate nature itself.
Okay, now that sounds like some serious next-level wizardry.
Yeah.
How does he support that claim?
He delves into the concept of megaliths, those ancient stone structures like Stonehenge. He argues that they weren't just ceremonial sites, but sophisticated tools for manipulating natural energies.
Wait, so Stonehenge is like a giant battery or something?
Okay. Well, Hoffman suggests something along those lines, yeah. He believes these structures were designed to channel and amplify telluric currents.
Telluric currents. I'm not familiar with that term.
It refers to the Earth's natural energy flows, like the Earth's energy grid. Hoffman sees these currents as a powerful force that can be harnessed and directed for various purposes.
So it's like acupuncture on a planetary scale, using these megaliths to manipulate the Earth's energy meridians.
That's a great analogy. And he connects this concept directly to the Masonic agenda, suggesting they see themselves as architects of a new world order. Not just in a social or political sense, but in a literal physical sense,
So they're not just trying to control governments and institutions. They're trying to shape the very landscape of the planet.
That's Hoffman's argument. He suggests they believe they can mold reality to their will using these ancient techniques.
Okay, this is blowing my mind wide open. But if these megaliths were so effective at manipulating energy, why don't we build them today?
That's a great question. Hoffman proposes that the knowledge of how to construct and utilize these structures has been lost, or deliberately suppressed.
Suppressed by whom? The secret societies themselves. Like they're hoarding this ancient wisdom to maintain their power.
That's one possibility he puts forth. He argues that by keeping this knowledge hidden, they ensure that only they can wield this kind of power.
It's like a secret recipe for shaping reality, and they're the only ones who know the ingredients.
Exactly. And he even connects this to the rise of modern science, suggesting that it was a deliberate shift away from a more holistic understanding of the universe.
So instead of seeing ourselves as part of a larger interconnected web of energy, we've become fixated on the material world and lost sight of the spiritual dimension.
That's the idea. Hoffman argues that this shift in thinking has made us more susceptible to manipulation because we've narrowed our focus and lost touch with those deeper forces.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all ties together. But let's go back to the concept of ritual murders and their role in this grand occult scheme. Give me some specific examples from the book that illustrate this.
One of the most infamous cases Hoffman cites is the Jack the Ripper murders in Victorian London. He claims these weren't just random acts of violence, but carefully staged rituals designed to achieve specific occult objectives.
Okay, I'm all ears. How does he back up that claim? It seems like a pretty big leap to connect Jack the Ripper to some grand conspiracy.
Well, he looks at the details of the crimes, He points to the specific ways the victims were killed, the locations where their bodies were found, even the timing of the murders. He believes all of these things align with occult symbolism and rituals.
So it's like a macabre puzzle, with each piece revealing a deeper, darker meaning.
Exactly. And Hoffman goes even further, connecting the Ripper murders to the highest echelons of British society. He suggests that powerful figures within the government and even the royal family were involved.
Whoa, hold on. That's a pretty explosive accusation. Isn't that bordering on slander?
Remember, we're exploring Hoffman's perspective, not necessarily endorsing it as fact. He presents a compelling case, drawing on historical records and eyewitness accounts, but it's certainly a controversial theory.
I'm definitely intrigued and a little creeped out.
Yeah.
Tell me more about this alleged connection to the elite.
Well, Hoffman points to the involvement of Sir William Gull, Queen Victoria's personal physician, as one of the key figures in the Ripper conspiracy. He also cites evidence that high-ranking Freemasons, including those in law enforcement, were involved in covering up the murders.
So it's a conspiracy that goes all the way to the top, like something out of a Dan Brown novel.
That's Hoffman's argument. He sees the Ripper murders as a prime example of how the occult operates in secrecy, with the complicity of those in power.
This is seriously dark stuff. I'm starting to wonder if I should be taking notes or calling the FBI.
Let's stick with taking notes for now. It's important to remember that we're dealing with theories and interpretations, not necessarily hard evidence. But even as theories, these ideas are worth exploring because they challenge us to think critically about the world around us.
Okay, my head is spinning, but I'm ready to keep going. What other examples of ritual murders does Hoffman explore? Does he connect anything closer to our own time?
He dives into the Son of Sam murders that terrorized New York City in the 1970s. He argues that David Berkowitz, the man convicted of the crimes, wasn't a lone gunman but part of a larger satanic cult.
So it's not just about individual killers. It's about organized groups carrying out these rituals for some sinister purpose.
That's Hoffman's contention. He sees the Son of Sam case as a prime example of how these occult groups operate, using fear and violence to achieve their goals.
What were their goals in this case? What were they trying to achieve through these seemingly random murders?
Hoffman suggests that the Son of Sam killings were part of a larger occult ritual designed to terrorize the city and imprint specific messages on the collective psyche.
What kind of messages? Like subliminal programming through fear.
Exactly. Messages of fear, chaos, and the breakdown of social order. He argues that these groups thrive on instability because it allows them to exert greater control. People are more likely to accept radical solutions, even authoritarian ones, when they're afraid and desperate for security.
So it's like they're creating the very problems they claim to solve, using fear as a tool to manipulate the masses.
That's a cynical but insightful observation. And Hoffman doesn't shy away from connecting these events to even larger occult agendas, ultimately leading back to that concept of a new world order.
Okay, give me the big picture. What's the ultimate goal of all these rituals and manipulations, according to Hoffman?
He believes it's all part of a plan to usher in a new world order, a society based on their occult principles and ruled by an elite few who possess this hidden knowledge and power.
A new world order. That's a pretty familiar conspiracy theory. We've heard that one before.
I know, it sounds like something out of a late-night talk radio show. But remember, Hoffman isn't just throwing around buzzwords. He tries to back up his claims with meticulous analysis and historical evidence. Whether or not you find his arguments convincing is up to you, but it's important to at least consider the possibility that there are forces at play that we may not fully understand.
Okay, I'm willing to hear an out, but I have to admit, this is all starting to feel a bit overwhelming. It's like peeling back layers of an onion, and each layer reveals something even more disturbing.
I understand. It's a lot to absorb, and it can be unsettling to confront the possibility that there are forces at work that we don't fully understand or control, but that's also what makes this so fascinating. It challenges us to look beyond the surface of things and question the narratives we've been given.
I definitely feel like my worldview is being shaken. But I'm also curious to hear more about Hoffman's analysis of these specific cases, like the Son of Sam murders.
Let's delve into that in more detail. It provides a compelling example of how Hoffman applies his theories to real-world events. Do you remember the basic facts of the case?
Vaguely. Wasn't it a string of shootings in New York City in the 70s?
Yes. In the mid-1970s, a series of seemingly random shootings terrorized New York City. The killer, who became known as the Son of Sam, targeted young couples parked in cars using a .44 caliber revolver.
And the killer claimed to be receiving orders from a demonically possessed dog, right? That's the part I remember most vividly.
Yes, that was part of the sensationalized narrative that gripped the city. The killer sent taunting letters to the police and the media, signed Son of Sam, and claiming to be a servant of darkness. It was a media frenzy, and people were terrified.
And eventually, David Berkowitz was arrested and confessed to the crimes, case closed, right?
That's the official story. But Hoffman argues that Berkowitz was not a lone gunman, but part of a larger satanic cult. He suggests that the whole demon dog story was a deliberate misdirection, a way to obscure the true nature of the crimes.
Okay, so it's not just about one crazy guy. It's about an organized group carrying out these rituals for some dark purpose.
That's what Hoffman suggests. He presents evidence that Berkowitz was connected to a network of individuals involved in occult practices. He sees the Son of Sam case as a microcosm of the larger conspiracy he outlines in his book.
What kind of occult practices are we talking about? Give me some specifics.
Hoffman points to things like animal sacrifices, ritualistic gatherings, and the use of specific symbols and locations that align with occult traditions. He suggests that these practices weren't just about personal beliefs or individual deviance, but part of a larger plan to manipulate and control society.
So it's like they were creating a kind of alternate reality, a world of darkness and violence that existed alongside our everyday world, but most people were oblivious to it.
That's one way to think about it. And Hoffman argues that these rituals weren't just for the participants' own gratification. They were designed to have a larger impact on society, to disrupt the natural order and create a climate of fear and uncertainty.
What kind of impact were they trying to achieve? It seems counterintuitive that creating chaos would give them more control.
That's where Hoffman gets really interesting. He suggests that they were trying to create a climate of fear and instability to weaken the fabric of society and make people more receptive to their occult agenda. He argues that fear makes people more willing to accept authoritarian solutions, even if it means sacrificing their freedom and autonomy.
So it's like they're using terror as a weapon to break down society's resistance to their control.
Exactly. And he points to the media coverage of the Son of Sam case as playing right into their hands. The sensationalized reporting amplified the fear and paranoia, which is exactly what the cult wanted.
It's like the media became an unwitting accomplice to their crimes, spreading their message of terror far and wide.
That's a provocative idea, isn't it? Hoffman argues that the media often plays a role in amplifying and disseminating the messages of these occult groups, even if unintentionally.
This is starting to feel like a very elaborate and insidious form of psychological warfare, where the battlefield is our minds.
That's exactly what Hoffman is suggesting. He believes we are engaged in a battle for the control of our minds, and that we are often unaware of the forces arrayed against us.
Okay, this is seriously heavy stuff, but I'm ready for more. What other insights does Hoffman offer into the Son of Sam case? Does he go beyond just claiming it was a satanic cult?
He delves into the symbolism surrounding the murders, looking for clues and hidden messages. He points to the killer's choice of victims, the locations where the shootings took place, and even the timing of the events, all of which he believes align with occult significance.
Okay, give me some specific examples. What kind of symbols are we talking about? I'm starting to see symbols everywhere now.
Well, Hoffman points to the fact that most of the victims were young couples parked in cars. He sees this as a symbolic representation of the union of opposites, a key concept in occult philosophy.
So they weren't just random victims. They were chosen for a specific reason, to represent some kind of occult principle.
That's Hoffman's argument. He sees these murders as more than just acts of violence. They are symbolic rituals designed to disrupt the natural order, to invert and pervert the natural harmony of the universe.
Okay, what about the locations? What significance do they hold? Did he find some hidden Masonic temple in the Bronx or something?
Not quite a Masonic temple, but Hoffman points out that many of the shootings took place in areas with known occult connections. For example, one of the murders occurred near Untermeyer Park in Yonkers, a place steeped in occult history and rumored to be a gathering spot for satanic cults.
So they weren't just choosing any random street corner. They were selecting places with symbolic resonance, places that already held a certain dark energy.
Exactly. And Hoffman argues that the timing of the murders was also significant, aligning with specific astrological events and occult holidays. He believes that these groups plan their actions carefully, taking into account these cosmic alignments to maximize their impact.
This is getting really intricate. It's like they were orchestrating a macabre ballet with each step carefully planned and executed to achieve a specific occult goal.
That's the image Hoffman conjures. He sees these events as carefully orchestrated rituals designed to achieve specific occult objectives. It's a chilling thought, but one that forces us to confront the possibility that there are forces at play that operate beyond our everyday understanding of the world.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. I need a moment to process all of this.
Take your time. It's a lot to digest, but we're just getting started. There are even more layers to Hoffman's theory that we need to explore.
Okay, I'm both fascinated and terrified to continue. Lead the way. What other rabbit holes are you going to lead me down?
Let's delve into one of the most controversial aspects of Hoffman's theory, the concept of episodic revelation.
Episodic revelation. That sounds intriguing and maybe a little terrifying.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
It's the idea that these occult groups deliberately release information about their activities, but in a controlled and manipulated way.
Wait, so they want us to know what they're up to? That doesn't make sense. Why would they reveal their secrets if they're trying to stay hidden?
It's not about full disclosure. Hoffman argues that they use a strategy of gradual disclosure, releasing bits and pieces of information over time, often through seemingly unrelated events or sources. He believes they do this to destabilize our perception of reality and make us more receptive to their agenda.
Oh, okay. Explain how that works.
Yeah.
How does revealing secrets actually give them more control? It seems counterintuitive.
Well, Hoffman argues that by releasing information in a fragmented and often contradictory way, they create a sense of confusion and uncertainty. This makes it difficult for us to form a coherent understanding of events, and it undermines our trust in traditional sources of information.
So it's like they're playing a game of smoke and mirrors, making it impossible to see the truth clearly. They want us to be so confused and disoriented that we just give up trying to make sense of it all.
Exactly. And he points to how this strategy plays out in relation to major events like the Kennedy assassination and the Watergate scandal.
Okay, let's start with JFK. How does episodic revelation apply to his assassination?
Well, Hoffman argues that the official narrative of Lee Harvey Oswald as a lone gunman was deliberately flawed and incomplete, leaving many questions unanswered. He suggests that this was intentional, a way to plant seeds of doubt and suspicion.
And then, over time, new information emerged, pointing to a possible conspiracy, further fueling the confusion and distrust.
Exactly. And Hoffman suggests that this was all part of the plan, to create a climate of uncertainty and suspicion, to make people question everything they thought they knew. He believes that by eroding our trust in official narratives, they create a vacuum that they can then fill with their own version of reality.
So it's not just about covering up the truth. It's about using the truth as a weapon, releasing it in a way that sows chaos and confusion.
That's a chilling but insightful observation. And Hoffman argues that this strategy has been used repeatedly throughout history to manipulate public opinion and shape the course of events.
Okay, my mind is officially blown again. This is some seriously deep stuff, but I'm ready for more. What other mind-blowing revelations does Hoffman have up his sleeve?
Excellent. Let's delve into another key aspect of Hoffman's theory, the concept of the videodrome.
The videodrome. Sounds like something out of a dystopian sci-fi movie.
It might, but Hoffman uses it to describe the pervasive influence of electronic media, particularly television, on our consciousness. He sees it as a powerful tool for programming our thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors.
So it's like our reality is being shaped by what we see on the screen. We're becoming slaves to the flickering images.
That's the essence of Hoffman's argument. He sees the videodrome as a tool for mass manipulation, a way to bypass our critical thinking and implant messages directly into our subconscious.
Okay, I can see how television can be influential, especially with all the advertising and propaganda that bombards us constantly. But how does it connect to the occult? Are they hiding subliminal messages in sitcoms or something?
Hoffman argues that the occult operates on a symbolic level, using images and archetypes to implant messages in our subconscious. He believes that television is a perfect vehicle for this kind of symbolic programming because it's so visually stimulating and because we tend to let our guard down when we're watching TV.
So it's not just about what we see, it's about the hidden meanings behind the images, the symbols and archetypes that resonate with our deepest fears and desires.
Exactly, and he suggests that the videodrome is constantly bombarding us with occult symbolism, shaping our perception of reality without our conscious awareness.
Okay, give me some concrete examples. What kind of occult symbols are we talking about? I'm starting to get a little paranoid about my Netflix queue.
He points to the use of certain colors, shapes, and numbers, as well as recurring themes and archetypes that appear in movies, TV shows, and commercials. For example, he might point to the repeated use of triangles or pyramids in logos and imagery, or the prevalence of certain colors like red and black, which hold symbolic significance in occult traditions.
So it's not just about watching TV. It's about learning to decode the hidden language of the Videodrome, to see the symbols and understand the messages they're trying to convey.
That's the challenge Hoffman presents. He wants us to become aware of the subtle ways our minds are being manipulated and to develop a more critical and discerning eye when it comes to consuming media. He's not saying we should all throw out our TVs and live in caves, but he wants us to be more conscious consumers of media, to be aware of the messages we're being bombarded with, and to choose what we allow into our minds.
Okay, this is seriously mind-bending. It's like the whole world is a giant conspiracy and we're all just pawns in their game.
It can feel that way when you first start exploring these ideas. But remember, Hoffman is offering a perspective, a way of seeing the world that may not be entirely accurate or complete. His goal is not to make us paranoid or fatalistic, but to empower us to think critically and to question the narratives we're given.
Okay, that's a little reassuring. But I have to admit, I'm still struggling to wrap my head around all of this.
Yeah.
It's a lot to take in.
I understand. It's a complex and challenging theory, but it's one that can offer valuable insights into the forces shaping our world. Whether or not you agree with Hoffman's conclusions, his work forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about the nature of power, manipulation, and control.
I definitely feel like I've expanded my understanding of reality, even if it's a reality that I'm now a little terrified of.
That's the power of a deep dive. It allows us to explore new ideas and to challenge our assumptions, even if it takes us to some dark and uncomfortable places. It's a journey of discovery, but also a journey of questioning and critical thinking.
I'm definitely feeling a mix of emotions right now. But I'm also curious to learn more. Where do we go from here? What other dark secrets await us in the depths of this rabbit hole?
Well, I think the next step is to explore Hoffman's analysis of the Golem, a mythical creature from Jewish folklore that he sees as a powerful metaphor for the dangers of technology.
Okay, I'm ready to dive into that next time. Listeners, be sure to join us for the final part of our deep dive into secret societies and psychological warfare. All right, folks, welcome back for the grand finale of our deep dive into Michael A. Hoffman II's Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare.
We've gone pretty deep down this rabbit hole, haven't we? From mind control and ritual murders to the manipulation of nature itself.
My head's still spinning, honestly.
Yeah.
But we left off talking about the Golem and its connection to technology.
Right. Hoffman uses the Golem, that creature from Jewish folklore, as this powerful metaphor. He's talking about the potential dangers of unchecked technological advancement.
Refresh my memory on the Golem. It's been a while since Hebrew school.
So in Jewish folklore, the golem is an artificial being, often made of clay, and it's brought to life through these mystical rituals and Hebrew incantations. It's a powerful symbol, really, of humanity's ambition to create life, to rival God's power.
So like Frankenstein's monster, but with a Kabbalistic twist.
That's a good comparison. Both stories explore those big questions, right? The ethical and spiritual implications of humanity's desire to create life. And Hoffman draws a direct line from the golem to modern technology, saying they both represent a similar impulse to transcend our limitations and achieve a kind of, godlike power.
Wait, so he's saying our laptops and smartphones are like modern-day golems.
Not literally, of course, but he sees them as a manifestation of that same desire, right?
Right.
To create artificial intelligence, to break free from the limitations of the physical world, maybe even achieve a kind of immortality through digital means.
Okay, I can see how that analogy works. But is he saying technology is inherently evil? Like, should we all ditch our smartphones and go live off the grid?
No, Hoffman's not a Luddite. He acknowledges the benefits of technology, but he's also acutely aware of its potential for misuse, especially when it's in the wrong hands, people who might seek to control and manipulate others. He sees the golem as a cautionary tale, a warning against the hubris of thinking we can control the forces we unleash.
So it's not the tech itself, it's who controls it and how it's used. Like any powerful tool, right? Could be good, could be bad.
Exactly. And Hoffman's particularly concerned about the potential for technology to be used for surveillance, propaganda, social control, all that. He thinks these occult groups are actually at the forefront of the technological revolution, using their knowledge and influence to kind of steer us towards a future that fits their agenda.
Okay, starting to sound a bit like a sci-fi dystopia here, but I'm game. What specific examples does he give to support this connection between the occult and technology?
Well, he points to the involvement of figures like Jack Parsons in the early days of rocketry and space exploration.
Jack Parsons. The name rings a bell, but...
He was a brilliant but eccentric scientist, a real pioneer in rocket propulsion. But he was also deeply involved in the occult. a follower of Aleister Crowley, practiced ritual magic.
Hold on. A rocket scientist dabbling in the occult. That's a pretty wild combo. Sounds like a movie plot.
Right. And Hoffman sees it as more than just a coincidence. He suggests Parsons' occult beliefs directly influenced his scientific work, that he saw space exploration as this pathway to achieving occult goals, maybe even contact extraterrestrials or unlock some hidden cosmic powers.
So it's not just scientific curiosity, the desire to explore the universe. There's this whole hidden agenda, deeper motivation rooted in the occult.
That's Hoffner's take. He thinks there's a connection between that quest for technological advancement and the pursuit of occult knowledge and power. He sees a hidden agenda behind the space race, a desire to tap into cosmic forces and harness them, you know?
Okay, mind officially blown. I'm seeing the world through Hoffman's eyes now, and it's pretty wild.
Yeah.
And unsettling.
It is. It challenges us to look beyond the surface, right? Question the narratives we're given and consider that there might be forces at work we don't fully understand.
So where does all this leave us? What's the takeaway? Should we be like hiding in bunkers, stocking up on canned goods?
Hoffman's book isn't a survivalist manual. He's not trying to scare us into isolation or paranoia. Ultimately, his message is hopeful. He thinks that by becoming aware of these occult forces and their methods, we can resist their influence.
So it's not a hopeless situation. We're not just pawns in their game destined to be manipulated.
Exactly. He believes we have the power to choose our own destiny, shape our own reality. Knowledge is power, he argues. By understanding the tactics of manipulation and control, we become more discerning, more critical, and more resistant to those forces.
Okay, that's a bit empowering. But I gotta admit, I'm still feeling a bit overwhelmed. It's a lot to process, raises more questions than it answers.
I get it. Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare is a dense book, a challenging book. It requires careful thought and a healthy dose of skepticism. It's not a book to be taken lightly.
It's definitely made me think about the world in a whole new way. I'm seeing connections and patterns I never noticed before. Not sure if that's good or bad.
That's the power of a deep dive, right? Explore new ideas, challenge assumptions, even if it takes us to some dark places. It's a journey of discovery, but also one of questioning and critical thinking.
Feeling a mix of emotions, that's for sure. But grateful for the journey. It's been eye-opening.
And that, I think, is the key takeaway from Hoffman's work. Stay curious, keep questioning, never stop seeking the truth, no matter how challenging or unsettling it might be.
Well said. Listeners, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this deep dive. Hit us up on social media. Let us know what other mind-bending topics you'd like us to explore.
Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep diving deep.